Before we proceed, please note that the views and suggestions provided by our guest are general opinions and insights based on their personal experiences. These perspectives are meant to offer valuable information, but every individual's situation is unique. We encourage you to consider these viewpoints within the context of your own circumstances and consult with relevant professionals as needed.
Welcome to this episode of Community Updates. I am Modile Akintokun. With the back-to-school season upon us, there is no better time to discuss preparing children for the academic journey. My guest today is Laurie Hall. She's an incredible parent with 22 years under her belt, and she's guided her 4 children through to remarkable achievements. From fostering a love for learning to instilling discipline and work ethic, we'll uncover the strategies that have made a real difference. Thank you for joining me today, Laurie.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll just jump right into it. But the first thing that I want to say is that I met your youngest son before I met you. And I remember interacting with him, and I found him to be so well-mannered, well-behaved, well-learned also. And I just thought to myself, I have to find out who his parents are.
Yeah.
So I really must commend you on doing an amazing job, to get him to that point.
Yeah.
So are you able to share with us, for starters, some key principles or strategies that you think that you could swear by, so to speak, in raising your 4 kids?
I don't think I really had a strategy off the get-go, but I would more call it just a very deep sense of conviction and a deep sense of responsibility before God. So my husband and I never took parenting lightly. So right when they were babies, we would have been, I guess we call it pretty intense parents. We really wanted to do a good job, and we were not, never had the mindset, we'll just see what happens. We were very deliberate and intentional in everything that we did.
So
Yes.
there was, the strategy was intentionality.
Yes.
And you are very passionate about
Right.
parenting. You see it as a commission.
Yes,
A mission.
absolutely. So just sort of that concept that our children are given to us as gifts from God, and it's a stewardship, how we raise them, and
Right.
there will be an accountability for that. And that just has always gripped us. And so that, I guess, translates into just being very deliberate and taking it very seriously and absolutely doing it as best we can.
So would you say that you're both very active parents, or is it maybe like a 60-40, 70-30?
I'd say currently we're definitely both pretty active, but it's changed throughout. We've been, my oldest son's 22. So in
Yes.
different seasons of our life and different places in our careers. And, so I think that's kind of evolved and changed. There's always been someone who's kind of the most hands-on, but I would say probably David right now, he's working from home. So he would be the one who's there more than I am, which is kind of a total role reversal of what it would have been when they were younger. But there's always been someone there, and we're pretty deliberate in that.
So being deliberate sounds to me like everything starts in the home, where
Right.
you're building an environment that's supportive and conducive.
Right.
What are some of the things that you intentionally try to put in place in the home
In the
environment?
So definitely honoring God has been a huge one for us. And that's never, we've never wavered from that. That doesn't mean it's perfect, but that's been our arching sort of desire and goal. So whether that's, family devotions, or we go to church as a family, or, upholding just Christian principles in our home as far as the decisions we make and stuff like that, that's always been there. I think the other thing too is we would be pretty deliberate of making home a place of beauty and comfort and respite for the children. Like home's a safe special place that comforts them. So it's calm. And it's clean, and it's a place that can be celebrated and where they can be comfortable in. And we're pretty deliberate about that. Like, I want them to feel most secure at home.
That is awesome. That's amazing. So the home environment, you basically had a theme to it that is supposed to be calming, soothing, the peaceful place,
right?
The place to come home to, the place to come back to,
and a respite from all the chaos of the world. So we would be deliberate, like, as far as, you know, we wouldn't have the TV always going, or, you know, like, it would be like, we would be very deliberate in that.
So is this plants, decor, calm music?
Yeah, that would all be part of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not just throwing a bunch of chairs together.
No. And I happen to have a background in design, so. Right. So that maybe is a good outlet for it. But.
That's awesome. Yeah. So with your background in design, you know, you're able to put the ambience together, you know, intentionally to give them that.
But doing it so that the children, and that home is a special place, I guess. That's the motive behind it. Not just to have a nice home.
Okay.
It's to nurture them. Okay. Yeah.
Interesting. So if you were to speak to parents who maybe are having a challenge with instilling discipline, or, you know, helping their children to value the home space, what are some things that you would say?
Discipline as far as like for them, their work ethic, you mean? Or
work ethic, you know, and even just, you know, moral values,
right.
Everything that would make them grow into stable adults.
Yeah. So I think for that one, Model 8, and this is such a hard answer, but it's us, right, as parents. So if I'm not showing discipline in my life, and if I'm not role modeling that, I can't expect my kids to be living to a different standard than I hold myself to, right? So that's the piece that's so challenging. But I think that's the reality of it.
Leadership by example.
Yeah, definitely.
So don't do what I say, but what I do.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's what happens whether you tell them or not.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the.
Any specific habits? So kids have been on a summer vacation, you know, and it happens every year during summer vacation. I'm assuming that the kids would have a different routine, maybe a more relaxed routine.
Definitely, yeah.
So how do you get the kids back into
it? So we're not kind of there yet, but I'd say next week we'll probably start, you know, making sure everyone's in bed by 10 and like that kind, like, so not, I probably won't insist on them waking up at school time, but I would more just insist on an earlier bedtime, and hopefully that kind of will translate into resetting their natural, just kind of start there, because it feels kind of cruel to make them wake up at 7 o'clock if they don't have to on their last few days of summer vacation. But I would just sort of not let them stay up as long.
So you're making the routine, you're making the routine happen, but you're doing it
slowly,
in a sneaky way. Because early to bed is early to rise, right?
So hopefully.
So you just try to bring the bedtime back earlier, you know, and then hopefully everything else flows.
And it won't be quite as much of a rude awakening on the 7th when they have to get up.
My goodness, So with your kids, I know that there's different types, you know, of schooling and stuff. And I know that you have actually practiced homeschooling.
Yeah.
How did you get to that?
To do the homeschooling.
To that decision.
So homeschooling for us, homeschooling was something I thought was very, very strange. Growing up, my family, we would have known a couple kids that did it, and I just thought it was absurd, and I felt so sorry for them. And then we had our own kids, and we were living in Manitoba, and we got to know some families that were doing it. So I'm meeting these families as a mom as opposed to a child.
Right.
And I really liked their kids. So I found their kids were very articulate, very engaged, they were interesting. They had lovely families, you know, and all these homeschooling families that we met. And these were families that maybe had kids, you know, in their teenage years. And I just have babies at this point.
Right.
And you kind of go, oh, so something I had kind of in my brain just thought was really weird, all of a sudden became oh, that's interesting. So I think that was kind of the start of my interest. And then when we moved to Nova Scotia, so it was time to send my oldest Matthew to school. And I just wasn't sure if I wanted to do it. You know, it just felt like such a big commitment. It felt like I didn't know if I could. I didn't feel that I was able. And I had a friend in Manitoba, and she had put her son in and then pulled him out because she was unhappy with the school system. So her advice to me was, Lori, if you're at all thinking of homeschooling, try it. Because otherwise, if you put your kids in and something goes south, you're going to be quick to pull them out. And she felt that transition of in and out was a bit traumatic for her kids. So she said, just try it till Christmas. If you love it, great. If you hate it, it'll be out of your system and you're just going to be content with the public school system. So that's what we did. So Matthew started kindergarten. And I mean, kindergarten, it was reading, it was coloring, it was a few crafts. Like, it wasn't a huge commitment. So I was like, surely I can't screw this up. So I was willing to kind of go, okay, I'll try it till Christmas. And that's what we did. And then we just liked it. And the kids liked it. And we liked the lifestyle that it enables us. And so then we just kept going. So then Matthew would have gone right to grade 12, homeschooling.
Wow.
Yeah. And he did great.
That is very interesting. So you went all the way, you went like a full 180 degrees.
Totally. Yeah. And it was just something like, and I think if anyone would have told me I was going to be doing it for that many years, like I just would have, like I could not have done it. But it was just like, yeah, I can read books with my kids till Christmas, right? And so it's starting. So then they never went to school. So it was kind of I think it was easier in a sense because then you were able just to set how you wanted to run it. You know, my kids had no notion of what school was. So I wasn't being compared to it to sort of a construct that they had. Yeah.
So your oldest, Matthew, what's his qualification?
So he's in engineering right now. Yeah.
So wait, you have one engineer,
so he'll be graduating,
and then who's next?
And then Maggie's already graduated from nursing.
So one engineer, one nurse.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Done good.
Okay,
and
who's
then
next?
Anna is starting second year at university, and she's doing health sciences. And nuclear medicine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then your youngest one,
my youngest,
Jack.
That's the one you met. He's going into grade 11, and he's done private school for the last 2 years.
Okay, so he's had a mix. Of both.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So you've had the homeschooling experience, and then you've also had the regular schooling experience.
Yeah.
Would you say in both cases, like curiosity for learning is important?
Yeah.
So how do we achieve that?
I think couple things on that one. I think reading is key. So that would have been something. So the homeschool program that I used it's called Sunlight, SONLIGHT. It's a Christian curriculum. And it was very, very literature rich. So tons of books. We read nonstop.
Okay.
And I think that just instills in children right from a young age an ability to self-teach and self-learn, because they have access to a whole world of different, depending on what they're reading, they can learn about that. So that's something that's really key. And then the other thing is, I think this one comes back to the parent too, is you have to be willing to try new things. You have to be willing to learn new things.
Right.
Whether it's as simple as cooking something new for supper, or let's go try a new place, or, so that curiosity, I think, is more of a family culture thing than it is that you just expect to see it in your children.
That's very interesting. So not only mirror things like discipline and character, but also a desire to learn.
Yeah, and that humility that I don't know how to do that, and I'm going to have to learn it, or go ask someone, or whatever.
So in a sense, the kids have to see the parents vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And see you not know something, and then watch the process of navigating to learning how to do a thing, and then that builds, and then reading. Yes. Lots of reading.
Yeah, I think that's key.
How do we navigate lots of reading now when everything seems to be gadgets and finger clicking?
I know.
How do we put some of that in there now?
I don't know. It's a tough one. And I mean, even I find like schools don't have as like, as a homeschooler, we would have read far more books than even just what's required in the school system, because I think kids aren't as apt to do it. So I think
Right.
they've actually decreased the amount of novels, say, the kids are reading in English or
Right.
whatever, right? I think controlling the technology, like I think you have to have very, very firm regulations on it.
Okay.
Or I think it's because it's just the kind of thing, it's so addictive and it's so time consuming. And if you don't have firm boundaries on it, they're going to choose that every time.
So introduce more books, like manual books, physical
Yeah.
books that,
Yeah.
and then read with them, right?
Yeah.
And then, well, have firm boundaries on the technology. What do you think about the idea of maybe blending, maybe just for compromise, having them do some reading on their technology?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the point, that can work. The point is to get them reading, right? So in whichever way they do, definitely.
Now, my next question is around being ready, internally, emotionally, psychologically, for kids. There's so much out there. There's so many different kinds of, there's all kinds of different ideologies, and there's things like bullying and that kids, face when they go to school. How would we, as parents, what's your take on how we can write the script into the kids, while they're with us during the holidays in preparation for a new school year, new classrooms, new learning, new friends, new teachers, maybe even new schools.
Right. Yeah. I think that one just comes down to just relationship. I feel like summer's just about building that. In a safe place and just having fun times together and you becoming someone that they're comfortable talking to, because you can't pre-program, every scenario that they're going to face.
Yeah.
But by establishing, open communication, good relationship, that you're someone they want to talk to and that they're going to come to with their issues, then you can have a bit of input when some of those situations come up, or they're going to, come home and say, oh, so-and-so did this, or this is what the other kids are into, or whatever, right? Whereas if there's no communication, you're not even going to hear what's actually happening in their little lives.
Okay, so some intentionality again, in communication, so
not so much like talking about all the hard issues, but just actually just building the relationship, so that when the hard stuff does come up, that
they already talk to you.
Yeah.
So they don't shy away from you when it's time to...
So it doesn't feel weird and awkward. Oh, I'm going to tell my mom about this crazy thing that went down. Well, I talk to my mom every day, so it's just naturally going to come out.
So being not just parents, but friends and counselors for the kids, especially over the holidays, so that, they're learning, they're drinking from your experience, actually.
Yeah, and just have fun.
So in the process of all of that, in all that communication, how do we help the younger ones get to understand who they are or where they should end up on the academic journey? Sometimes it feels like it's not one and the same, like who they are and where they should end up, or is it one and the same?
Right. They're exposed to so much. So when I think about my kids, where they actually started and where they ended up are two different places. And it is a journey. So maybe what they thought they wanted to do when they were younger children, they sort of came to it that probably wasn't going to be reasonable, or wouldn't be feasible, or, so it's a constantly evolving thing, what the child actually desires. Like, as far as, are you talking like career-wise,
yes,
right?
career-wise.
Yeah. And I think it's something... I don't think we've ever been like, no, you can't do that. But obviously your kids come up with some different scenarios. And sometimes you're thinking, okay, because you know the better than anyone. So, but it would never be like, no, you can't do that. But definitely if they would have said different things, you might, point out some parts of the occupation that might not be as desirable to them based on their temperament or based on the kind of person that they are. And they kind of naturally, I think, as they grow, mature, and become more self-aware, they tend to see that.
So I think that kind of tied back to the communication and relationship part,
Yeah.
where you're open and honest with them about what you see as their strengths and their weaknesses, And they're able to participate in that because they're coming to you with their questions.
And so
they've come to trust your opinion.
But then like the practical side of that, I was thinking, my youngest, he always wanted to be a fireman. Which is like most little boys do want to be a fireman. and he'd be a great fireman. He's physically fit. And like, he'd be apt to sort of take on the challenge of that kind of thing. But then as we kind of, talked about that and got to know different people and, we met some different firemen and talked to them. And the one that we talked to, he said that really for a white male to become a fireman is like winning the lottery because they're trying to have so much. They want to have female diversity. They want to have different, diversity as far as different cultures. So like of the, whatever, say there was 50 seats that they were taking on for firemen, there was maybe like, I don't know. It was a very limited number that were of white males that could actually take those seats.
Wow.
So, things like that, then that's just the practical side of it. Okay, are you going to have your sights set on a career that it's highly competitive and highly unlikely you're going to be one of the two white males that get that spot, right? So, as much as, that kind of suited him, that probably wasn't reasonable.
So the hard conversations,
and not that they were that hard, but you just are being honest.
The facts.
And exactly.
The facts and the reality.
So at no point am I saying, no, you can't do that, but it's just informing and just constantly talking about it.
Awesome. Okay, so as we round up, we've talked about, getting them psyched, emotionally. First to turn back in school is usually flu season.
Yes.
Any tips on getting children back to school, to be, in top physical form?
I don't know. Feed them well. Lots of vegetables. Lots of sleep, right? Just all those things.
Okay.
To wash their hands when they come home.
Right.
Yeah. Those would be the things I would say. Don't send them in if they're sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Important. We learned with the last, with COVID and everything, we learned the importance, of
definitely.
Personal hygiene and also how quickly things can spread.
Yes.
Wow, this has been very enlightening, very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing the time with us today. That was Laurie Hall, a parent of 4 amazing children, sharing valuable parenting tips even as back to school season returns. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and get notified when we post the next episode. I am Modele Akintokun, and I will see you soon.
Community Update is brought to you with the support of the following organizations, businesses and individuals: Heritage Canada, Canadian Association of Community Television Users and Stations, Cactus, M4 Media, Flenjor Foods, Hallicraft Buka, Sheyi Ajetamobi, Yogesh Mehta, and Natural Butter Bar.